President-elect Trump's nominee for border czar is not wasting any time. Today he joined Texas Governor Greg Abbott to visit the U.S.-Mexico border. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Thomas Homan, Trump's nominated border czar, visits the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas on Tuesday. He told Fox and Friends that he'll be joined by Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Well, we're not waiting to January 20th. We're already planning what we're going to do to lock down the state of Texas.
Abbott has called Homan the right guy in charge. They started the visit at a Texas military base along the banks of the Rio Grande, visiting National Guard soldiers and Department of Public Safety troopers in the area.
As we say in Texas, this is not his first rodeo. He's been down this pathway before, done this before, comes ready and prepared.
Also on Tuesday, the Texas Land Commissioner Dawn Buckingham is with state leaders in Rio Grande City. They're kicking off a border wall construction event. Rio Grande City is in Starr County, Texas, a border county. And up until the 2024 election, the county hasn't backed a Republican president since 1892. Trump won it with about 58% of the vote in November. Biden won it in 2020 with 52%. And Hillary Clinton won it in 2016 with 79%. Border officials say migrant crossings are currently down in the area. They credit seasonal trends, federal executive action, and Governor Abbott's Operation Lone Star, which launched in 2021. Buckingham is also offering 1,400 acres to help with the incoming Trump administration's deportation plan.
And we're here to be a good partner. We've got a good piece of property. It happens to be very level, so easy to build on. It's got good access to roads, an international airport, and of course, an international crossing with Mexico, a bridge right across the river. So it's all in good proximity. If it's helpful to you, we're happy to partner up.
Also involving Rio Grande, the U.S. National Guard released more floating buoys to determine illegal immigration. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
So how might the Trump administration carry out the unprecedented mass deportation that is planned both financially and logistically? And what will be the effect of Trump's proposed tariffs on the CCP? Joining me now in our civil discourse segment is strategist Bobby Eberle and Democratic strategist Jonathan Harris. Jonathan Harris, Bobby Eberle, thank you both so much for joining.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
It's great to have you both. President-elect Trump promising a mass deportation of illegal immigrants, starting with what he's calling criminals first on day one. He said that he'll start with local sheriffs and law enforcement enforcing this. Bobby, I'll start with you. You being in Texas, how can he financially and practically carry out these mass deportations?
Well, I think you're going to see a two-pronged approach. I believe Tom Homan is actually here in Texas meeting with Governor Abbott, talking about ways to facilitate this type of ejection, basically mass deportation of these criminals. If you recall from the stats, there's over 16,000 known criminal murderers in the country, 25,000 known rapists. And so him starting there is a really good sign. And as far as facilitating these, we just have to, this is where the money needs to go. I think in the next phase, you're going to see some pressure put on businesses, almost a self-deportation. If the businesses aren't hiring, the people will return. But in this phase, the finances need to be provided by the federal government to get these people out. This is what people voted on when we saw the crime spiking in Manhattan, say, and we saw these cases like Lake and Riley and others. The need for action was clear, and he's going to deliver.
Jonathan, I'll give you a chance to respond. And is there a legal basis for some of these sanctuary cities and states to challenge these deportations?
And we know that crime data has shown that crime has dropped dramatically under Biden. I do think that when Trump was president the first time, Democratic governors and Democrats in the House and Senate were very effective at slowing and stopping a lot of the extreme things that he wanted to do. And so I do think that there will be a legal basis for that. the majority of this country actually voted against Donald Trump. That's very, very important to talk about when we talk about whether or not he would have majority support for some of these unpopular policies.
Bobby, I'll give you a chance to reply.
Yeah, absolutely. I disagree with probably 100% of what was said. The FBI put out a retraction to their statement that they made earlier during the campaign, which was used so much by left-wing legacy media, saying that the crime did indeed rise. During the summer, Manhattan put out a stat saying 2/3 or 3/4 of their summertime crime spree was done by illegal aliens. That's just a fact right there. So people voted on this. The polling showed it going in, the exit poll showing going out, that this was a major, major driver. And for someone to win 312 electoral votes, win the popular vote, it's considered a mandate by any standards. So people are on board. I don't know how much patience they'll have as the policies are implemented. I hope they give the president and his team a chance to actually get this done. But the mandate is there. The stats are there, and hopefully action will be implemented and done quickly.
Jonathan, some critics say that large-scale deportations of illegal migrants would negatively affect the U.S. agricultural industry. Do you think there could be incentives given for providing Americans with those jobs? And would there be any effects on food prices and availability?
I mean, look, there have been countless studies done that have shown that getting rid of undocumented immigrants in this country would adversely affect our economy. I mean, I'm not sure that I want to be very clear. I'm not suggesting that that's a reason to keep people in the country who are here illegally. But I'm saying that if your concern is purely economics, there's been plenty of data to show that it would harm the economy. A lot of these people pay taxes. They don't get anything back for the taxes that they're paying because they can't file a tax return. A lot of these people work for wages that are much lower than Americans would work for. If you talk about jolting the economy with getting rid of the labor that's provided by undocumented immigrants and then trying to employ Americans who are not going to work for those wages, I think you're talking about some clear, obvious, countless articles that document this, jolts and hindrances to economic growth. He started crashing the economy in 2019, and it was due to his trade war with China and some of his other policies.
Bobby, with regard to trade wars with China and economic policy, Trump yesterday announcing another 10% on China. This is coming, with mixed reviews. What is your take?
Well, first, let me address some of the points that were made earlier. I do believe, that there are studies that show the economic benefit of some, especially seasonal workers, agricultural workers. And so I think that is an important part of an overall immigration reform plan. I think too many times it was used to say, hey, these people are coming, so let's make a path to citizenship. Let's allow illegals to just pour in. I do believe that if we want that economy to continue to work, then sure, let's open up a path of discussion, a guest worker program where people are documented for the sole purpose of this seasonal work. Then they return to their countries and everything is accounted for. As far as China and the overall economy, I think tariffs can be used as a great negotiating tool to bring people to the table. If they don't want to have that tax on those goods, people too quickly say that, oh, this is just going to be a tax that's passed on to the consumer. But how many times in the past has it been used to bring a country to the negotiating table, whether it's for that certain economic benefit, manufacturing, car making, whatever, or a much larger foreign policy initiative? I think it is a great tool to bring these countries to the table, to get them to do what the United States wants to do. And the president has a pretty good track record on that.
Jonathan, just in fairness, President Biden, he did leave in the Biden administration those Trump-era tariffs on China all in place and, in fact, added to them. So doesn't that speak to perhaps the level of efficacy on those?
So if Donald Trump had been able to do whatever he was doing and not crashed our economy, that would have been fine. But he didn't. He crashed our economy. And when you look at what The Economist said, you can go back and read these articles. They have not been scrubbed from the internet. They document at the time that he was slowing our economy in late 2019. And it was predominantly because of what he was doing with the trade wars with China. I'm not saying the tariffs don't work at times.
Bobby, I have 30 seconds.
Yeah. Please,
the data speak to an economy that had record low unemployment, record low inflation, job growth. I mean, the unemployment of every sector was down to 40-year lows. Inflation, which was the bane of the Biden administration, was non-existent under the Trump administration. The reason he won, in addition to the border, if I could finish, please, is the fact that people wanted more money in their pockets. They knew how the economy was under Trump, and they wanted that back. They wanted that feeling of economic freedom, and that is why they voted for the president. And it was nice to at least see an acknowledgement that tariffs can be used as a leveraging tool. So I'm glad we have agreement on that. And I think President Trump is going to unleash a great economy, and we're going to see the effects of putting the Biden administration behind us and making America great again.
Certainly a passionate,
it would be the first time.
Passionate discussion. Really appreciate both voices here. Truly do. Bobby Eberle, Jonathan Harris, thank you both.
Thank you so much.
And how will President-elect Trump's picks for Secretary of State and National Security Advisor represent his America First policy? And with Israel and Hezbollah agreeing to a ceasefire deal today, will it ultimately bring lasting peace in the Middle East? Joining me now to discuss these developments is Rebecca Heinrichs, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. Rebecca Heinrichs, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you with us. Rebecca, President-elect Trump imposing or proposing, shall I say, new tariffs on China. I want to get your thoughts. There's mixed opinions out there right now as to how this will affect the economy. But in terms of a policy and strategy, what is your initial assessment?
Well, my initial assessment is we are really in the middle or the beginning of a new Cold War against China, led by China. It's an axis: China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. And so for the president-elect to take on China, which is what these tariffs are really about, I've got an open mind. China is a rival against the United States, economic, obviously. So if these tariffs help the United States so that we don't continue to be dependent on China, especially key manufacturing, key goods, if it helps to bring those jobs back at home and make it harder for those things to go to China, then I think it's going to be good. But in any kind of trade war, we have to remember it's not cost-free. That the consumer is the foot soldier in a trade war. And so I would expect that the incoming Trump administration would make a speech explaining to the American people why this is necessary.
I think it's an excellent point. Tariffs are certainly not one-dimensional and have to be looked at in a broader way. When it comes to the Indo-Pacific, I want to get your thoughts on policy there. Where are we right now when you look at the past 4 years in terms of our policy? Why does it matter? Why is it important there? And how should we be looking at it going forward?
Well, China is determined to replace the United States as the preeminent global power. And they seek to replace the United States militarily, economically, politically, and in the international system. Key to that is pushing the United States, or having the ability to push the United States out of the Indo-Pacific region. Obviously, the United States' policy with our allies and partners is that this is international waters. We should have free and peaceful open trade in this region. It's a key region for the global economy. And so China is really working to build a military capable of pushing the U.S. military out of the region. And so as we've seen over the last 4 years, China is becoming increasingly belligerent in the South China Sea versus the Philippines, a key U.S. ally of the United States. And so this is going to be a region in which the United States is going to have to reestablish deterrence, push China back, try to get it from being so belligerent. It's going to be a big challenge for the Trump administration.
And with that said, I want to get your thoughts on a couple of President-elect Trump's picks that are going to affect that region, especially when you look at somebody like Mike Waltz as a national security advisor, Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. What do you make of these choices, and how do you think U.S. policy may differ when it comes to China with those two at the helm?
Well, they're excellent picks. I mean, what this portends is that the Trump administration is serious about returning to a peace through strength American foreign policy. The United States does not want war, but we have adversaries who are determined to threaten U.S. key interests, to break up U.S. alliances. That would be bad, first and foremost, to the American people. And so they understand that it's going to take some tough action and some clear-eyed thinking and a more coherent geopolitical strategy. Both of those individuals, Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz, have a long record of understanding the threat quite clearly.
Sadly, the world right now is at a crossroads. I want to get your thoughts, just switching gears a little bit, when it comes to Israel and Hezbollah, the ceasefire in the north there. Israel's cabinet is discussing this 60-day ceasefire. They appear to have voted on it. Could this lead to a lasting peace agreement?
No, I don't think it will. And I think that Israel is going to be in a better position to end the conflict on terms better for Israel when you have an American presidency that's much more supportive of the Israeli government. And you're going to see that in the incoming Trump administration. And so my hope is that Israel wouldn't do anything now that would jeopardize its security in the long term. Obviously, you have these Iranian proxies throughout the region. Those are the ones that are perpetuating the conflict. And so until you have a U.S. administration that can provide the diplomatic backing to Israel and really a free hand to take care of, finally eliminate these Iranian proxies throughout the region, you're not going to have a lasting peace.
What are some of the factors that make you think that right now things don't look good for peace?
Well, you still need to eliminate all of the proxy groups. You have to have a return to squeezing the Iran regime. You have to have an American government in place that understands that that's the best way to peace. And so far, the Israeli government hasn't finally and ultimately secured its objectives. Remember, the Netanyahu administration has been very clear that this conflict will end when they have their hostages back, when they can finally destroy these Iranian proxies so that we don't have another October 7th again, and that they can't reconstitute to launch another October 7th attack. Those objectives have to be met if you're going to have any kind of final peace.
What role, Rebecca, do you think the United States should be playing in the Middle East under the next Trump administration, and how might this change from previous policy?
Well, I would like to see a return to the first Trump administration, which really had a brilliant strategy, which is that you fully support Israel. You kind of table the Israeli-Palestinian problem. You saw the finally moving the American embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing that as the capital of Israel. But you also just saw full support for the Israeli government, and then you had a squeezing of the Iran regime, and then you worked with Gulf partners, the Emiratis, the Saudis, so they could combat Iranian proxies throughout the region. The Biden administration really flipped that strategy on its head. It looked for appeasement with the Iran regime, it squeezed Israel, and it really took a hard approach towards the Saudi government, which we really haven't fully recovered from diplomatically yet. So my hope is that we get back to the first approach so that we can have the kind of peace process we had, like we saw with the Abraham Accords.
Rebecca Heinrichs, really appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.